Early in the morning, the labor market is crowded with migrant workers seeking employment. To save money, even elderly workers sleep outside shop fronts. A video shows 4 migrant workers sitting together for lunch, but what they eat is startling. Fried wheat flour mixed with water, a choice reflecting their need to save every penny. How much can you make in a day? A little over 400 yuan. And in a month? Over 10,000 yuan, I guess. What about a year? That's hard to say. I work when there's work. I wait when there's none. The man interviewed works as a scaffolder at a construction site, earning a daily wage of 400 yuan. Although this might seem substantial, such wages are not guaranteed every month, especially given the declining state of the real estate industry, making jobs increasingly scarce. Scaffolders' work involves erecting and dismantling scaffolds to support construction sites. Their job is far from easy, requiring them to work at great heights and deal with unpredictable elements such as sudden weather changes and equipment malfunctions, adding to the job's uncertainty and danger. This carpenter claims to earn between 3 to 400 yuan daily, roughly translating to 7 to 8,000 yuan monthly, but his annual income is merely enough to sustain basic living needs. These are the laborers at the construction site, generally engaged in basic and strenuous tasks. They earn about 240 yuan a day. Even so, they can only work for about 7 to 8 months each year. I'm a migrant worker, and I often hear people say that we earn a lot, over 200 yuan for a day's work, and even more if it's a good day, around 300. Those with skills can make 5 to 600 a day. Since you seem so envious, let me tell you about it. We wear clothes that cost just a few tens of yuan, eat meals that cost 10 yuan, and live in temporary housing on construction sites, facing the cold of winter and the heat of summer. Some office workers earn around 4 to 5,000 yuan a month, yet they can stay in hotels and dine in private rooms. We migrant workers slave away to build skyscrapers but don't even own a single brick in them. Luxury cars are everywhere now, but migrant workers might ride motorcycles or electric bikes, or at best drive an old clunker. How many migrant workers have you seen drinking Mao Tai? Maybe they've seen a bottle, but not many have tasted it. Cheap cigarettes, under 10 yuan, are popular not because people like them, but because they're affordable. Migrant workers can't afford the expensive ones. During the new year, we might grit our teeth and buy some good tea or alcohol to take home, but we only bring them out when guests come. There are many things we simply can't afford. Big brother, have you ever tried bubble tea? No. It costs about 10 yuan per cup. Would you spend that much? I've never tried it, and I wouldn't. This laborer has been working on construction sites for over 20 years, earning 3 to 400 yuan daily. Yet his income is not for personal use, but is entirely spent on his family's expenses. His wife and young children rely on him. When asked if he still has dreams, he replies that his dream is to continue earning money to afford his children's education, saying that as long as he is fed, it is enough. Why aren't you going to the canteen for meals? It's too far. Eating steamed buns here saves time, so I can do more work. What kind of work do you do? Pretty much anything. Doing more types of work means higher pay. A 19-year-old migrant worker, already toughened by construction site conditions, describes his job as extremely arduous, sometimes requiring 12 to 13 hours of work a day. Despite this, he still manages to send at least 1,000 yuan back home each month. However, he admits that his wage is still very low. According to state media, China's migrant workers, numbering around 300 million, are seen by government experts and officials as potential driver for economic recovery if given adequate support. Earlier, at the end of 2022, head of the Peking University's Ganghua School of Management, Liu Chao, stated that before the pandemic, the number of migrant workers reached 290 million, with 170 million working away from their home provinces. Among this vast group, over 50 million have been working locally for more than 10 years, earning an average monthly income of over 8,000 yuan, with dual income families earning around 16,000 yuan. This is considered the average income. Despite that their earnings are not insignificant, migrant workers have a low propensity to spend because they know they will eventually return to their hometowns. Faced with inequalities in education, elder care, healthcare, and public services compared to urban residents, their willingness to spend remains low. Liu Chao believes that addressing the urbanization of migrant populations and encouraging them to settle in cities could easily boost their consumption. Lu Chao's analysis suggests that when numbers of long-term migrant worker residents almost equal the number of household or hukou registered population, China's income and consumption issues will improve. He advocates for reforms in household registration, housing, provident fund systems, and public services to achieve this. At a 2024 economic forum, Chi Fu-lin, head of the Hainan Institute for Reform and Development, proposed unleashing the consumption potential of migrant workers, stating that if 300 million migrant workers were treated like urban residents, they could generate a consumption total of at least 12 trillion yuan. Chi estimates that each migrant worker could contribute 40,000 yuan in consumption potential. The deputy director of the National Bureau of Statistics, Shen Laiyun, also noted that China's real estate market still has support potential as urbanization is not yet complete. While the urbanization rate of the resident population reached 66.2% in 2023, the rate of the registered urban population was still below 50%, leaving 297 million migrant workers not fully integrated into urban life. Shen stated that the proportion of these migrant workers buying homes is low, indicating a vast potential consumer group. Sheng Laiyun noted that in 2023, the gap between the long-term resident population and the registered population reached 16.2%, most of whom are migrant workers residing in cities. However, the likelihood of these workers purchasing urban property remains low. In reality, buying urban property is not an urgent need for migrant workers unless it involves family matters like children or marriage. They generally do not choose to buy homes in cities due to several challenges such as elder care, healthcare, children's education, and dowry issues. During the 2023 National People's Congress sessions, the Chinese Communist Party announced an increase in urban and rural pensions, but by only 20 yuan, which was met with public ridicule. This nominal pension increase is far from sufficient to solve the living problems of migrant workers. Furthermore, healthcare insurance costs continue to rise. Initially, rural residents needed to pay only 10 yuan annually, which is increased to 380 yuan. In many provinces, medical insurance cards cover only up to 50 yuan per visit, with a patient bearing any excess. This situation has led more rural residents to forego medical insurance altogether. Before the issues of elder care and healthcare are resolved, it is virtually impractical for migrants to spend money on urban real estate. Moreover, given the current circumstances, it is unlikely that the CCP will substantially increase the pension for the rural elderly. Additionally, rural residents have a lower capacity to purchase homes. According to the data from the National Bureau of Statistics in 2023, the per capita disposable income of rural residents was 21,691 yuan, while their consumption expenditure was 18,175 yuan, indicating that essential living expenses accounted for 83.8% of their income. In the current economic environment, migrant workers are not lacking in purchasing power, but rather in disposable funds. With little money at hand, they are even less capable of buying homes. Therefore, the expert proposing the 300 million migrant workers could release a total consumption of 12 trillion yuan. Achieving a 40,000 yuan consumption potential per worker is merely theoretical. For a family with 2 migrant workers, they would need to spend 80,000 yuan. Under the current average income levels of migrant workers, this figure is not feasible. Moreover, the economic situation is dire, and the industries employing migrant workers are severely affected. People's incomes are significantly reduced. Foreign capital withdrawal, factory closures, and a sluggish real estate market all contribute to a bleak employment outlook for migrant workers. Migrant workers primarily engaged in labor-intensive industries like manufacturing, construction, and services. These industries are in a slump following the pandemic. The withdrawal of foreign investment, factory closures, a depressed office rental market, difficult residential sales, real estate market crises, and stagnation in construction, as well as the impact on hotels and restaurants, all paint a grim future. Despite this, the current CCP government insists on maintaining an optimistic stance economically, forbidding the spread of negative sentiments. However, the reality presents a stark contrast, and covering up these real issues is becoming challenging. Under the so-called Comprehensive Poverty Alleviation Policy, the CCP government often boasts of significant financial outlays but considers a mere 20 yuan monthly pension increase a significant favor. This indicates that the CCP does not intend to improve the welfare of rural residents, nor has it truly considered allowing them to live without worries about food and clothing. Experts and government officials have run out of effective measures to salvage the economy and the real estate market. The CCP government views migrant workers as a lifeline for revitalizing consumption in the real estate market, using them as a facade to cover up the severity of economic and real estate issues. Once again, migrant workers become the scapegoats used by experts and the government to disguise these problems. Here is a heartfelt truth from an ordinary migrant worker. He feels that he and other migrant workers are not suited for city life. Even if offered a house, he would not want it. He points out that migrant workers' wages are limited, and dreaming of a life with a car and a house is just that, a dream. He believes that adapting to city life is not a matter of impulse. Rural people lack urban experience and are easily deceived, leading to more people falling into difficulty after moving to the city. Banks lure rural people into taking loans to buy homes, which they ultimately cannot repay, leaving them homeless on the streets. He warns people not to blindly pursue city life, as they have limited funds and no stable source of income. If the factory closes one day, they would instantly be without money. This is a young and capable migrant worker who delivers food in the city. Despite a decent salary, his life remains challenging. After running around for a month, it's finally payday. Last month, I completed 1,223 orders, 6 yuan each, plus a 200 yuan bonus, totaling over 7,500 yuan. With a monthly salary of 7,500 yuan, the income of this delivery worker might seem substantial, but an overview of his expenses reveals the challenges of his daily life. Each month, he must pay 2,300 yuan towards his mortgage, a commitment he has maintained for 6 years, with 19 more to go. Additionally, he transfers 2,000 yuan to his family for their living expenses. The remaining funds cover his personal expenses. Rent and utilities cost 800 yuan, and he usually cooks for himself, occasionally ordering takeout. However, his daily smoking habit, even opting for the cheapest cigarettes, costs him 330 yuan. His work-related expenses include 300 yuan monthly for battery rental. He doesn't buy clothes, as 2 sets of work uniforms are sufficient for his needs. After calculating his expenditures, he finds he can save about 1,200 yuan each month without any extra spending. Amid a real estate crisis, declining exports, and widespread debt issues among local governments, the CCP urgently needs to stimulate consumer spending. However, Chinese households seem uninterested in spending freely as desired by the authorities, largely due to past policies. For years, even before the pandemic, some experts in China have been advocating for a shift in economic focus from massive infrastructure investment, real estate development, and exports to domestic consumption. The International Monetary Fund has made similar recommendations. However, the Chinese government has not made adjustments, as the existing economic focus appear to produce favorable growth figures, obscuring the real issues from the national leadership. Various economic indicators show that Chinese consumers are very discouraged and reluctant to spend. According to the latest official data from the CCP, retail sales of consumer goods in March increased by 3.1% year-over-year, a rate significantly lower than previous figures and expectations, indicating a continued weakness in consumer spending. On April 16, data released by the CCP's National Bureau of Statistics showed that retail sales of consumer goods reached 3.9 trillion yuan in March, marking a year-over-year increase of 3.1%. This growth rate is 2.4 percentage points lower than that of January-February and represents the lowest level since August 2023. This data also fell below market expectations. A survey by Caixin Media of 16 institutions showed that economists expected a median annual growth rate of 4% for March retail sales, with predictions ranging from 1% to 5.3%. However, economists surveyed by the Wall Street Journal had forecasted a median increase of 4.6% for the month. In terms of goods, in March, the year-over-year growth rates for staple food items in traditional and Western medicines increased by 2 and 3.9 percentage points respectively, reaching 11% and 5.9%. However, consumption of upscale goods declined, with cosmetics, jewelry, and precious metals growth slowing by 1.8 percentage points. Regarding consumption related to travel, clothing and footwear expenditures in March increased by 3.8%, rising by 1.9 percentage points, while petroleum product consumption grew by 3.5%, slowing by 1.5 percentage points. Additionally, in the first quarter, retail sales of consumer goods grew year over year by 4.7%, and service retail sales increased by 10%, both down 0.8% and 2.3 percentage points from January-February, respectively. A recent survey by the People's Bank of China also found that up to 15% of Chinese households have experienced a decrease in income, with many more expecting to face the same situation. About 43% of respondents express insecurity about their jobs. Regarding the real estate values, the balanced index of pessimism versus optimism has declined by nearly 15% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Only 15% of Chinese households expect real estate values to rise soon. Approximately 60% of Chinese households prioritize savings, while only about 25% are willing to spend normally. An increase in bank deposits also corroborates this. Despite interest rate cuts by the People's Bank of China, there has been no impact on the people's propensity to save. Analysts believe that the main reason for the low consumer spending is the real estate crisis. Bankruptcies of large property developers have put too much pressure on financial markets, hindering commercial expansion and employment. Additionally, the significant reduction in construction projects nationwide and the decline in property values have not only devastated household wealth, but also eroded confidence in consumption, prompting people to save rather than spend. The more severe issue is that the past boom was supported by bank loans. Although the debt remains, property prices have fallen significantly, further burdening people. The zero-COVID policies adopted after the pandemic have had significant social impacts. Many people with middle to low incomes feel that their income security has diminished compared to the past, making them less willing to spend money. Clearly, these issues cannot be resolved overnight. The future of China's economy faces many challenges, and without the buy-in from the wider public, the situation will only worsen.